Good afternoon, everybody. 1.0 patch notes are here. Let's get into this as quick as possible because I need to get this recorded, edited, and uploaded in a reasonable amount of time. So, servers are going down for 24 hours tomorrow at 12 Eastern. We're getting new cutscenes. We're getting a brand new intro cinematic to replace the class-specific ones, and there's going to be 8 other cinematics throughout the campaign chapters for a total right now of 9 cinematics. Let's see here. Updated all character classes with improved models, new rigs, new animations. Cool. Endgame rebalance. So, Arena, we're getting less XP if we're below level 50. Certain arena mods, especially those specific to T3 and T4, have been adjusted to lessen the impact of the global enemy buffs. However, these changes are smaller than the ones to dungeon mods. So T3 and T4 arena will be noticeably harder than before. Okay, that's nice. Because we have buffed enemies globally overall, we expect that it will be more difficult at a baseline. Makes sense. Endless Arena is going to scale faster. For example, Wave 140 is equivalent to old Wave 200. At 320, it's going to be equivalent to Wave 500. So they're making going far in Endless Arena harder. Campaign, visual updates, encounters in chapters 4, 5, and 6 have been overhauled. Nearly all 4, 5, and 6 scenes contain semi-randomized or fully randomized enemy placement. I believe this is the Imperial era of the game. Let's see. Many enemies with old models have been removed. No more jewel spiders or old chimeras. Okay. New enemies with new models such as zombie hounds, undead hydras, and bone mimics. Cool. Wraith Dunes no longer has infinite spawning wraiths. That's nice. Bugs with Imperial era enemies have been fixed. Scorpion enemies, except for the Gem Scorpion boss and the Voidstone Scorpion, now use the new Scorpion model. That was in a forum post. We've got new models for the Scorpion, the Sabertooth, a lot of the enemies. They showed some of those. Larger enemies such as Immortal Eyes and Desecrated Fleshes are now always rare. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Especially the Immortal Eyes. It was weird having normal monsters that were immune to freeze and stun. Let's see, quest encounters that previously involved a rare enemy now always feature a unique mini-boss. Example, the Imperial Wellrun quest has an Inquisitor mini-boss, and the Sapphire Quarter quest encounters have a Soul Warden and Sandlich mini-bosses. Okay. Additional mini-bosses. Town waypoints now unlock automatically upon entering the zone. That's nice. Enemies in T1 dungeons, so this is dungeon changes. T1 dungeons, they're getting less damage and less health. Removed entrances from all dungeons after the player's entered, so you can't exit through the entrance. Once you enter a dungeon, you're going to have to TP out. Lightless Arbor changes. All of the mini-bosses and boss are going to be granting more experience. Same thing with the other 2 dungeons. These are just going to be experience changes. Really, it looks like they're moving the experience around to the actual boss and not the little mini bosses inside the dungeon. Blessing changes. All of the resistances got buffed by 10% for the bottom. So the floor is now 10% higher. Virtue of Command that gives minions all resist gets buffed. There isn't much here that's getting nerfed. I think the big things here, Greed of Darkness and Grand Greed of Darkness are now giving Ward on Kill and Ward Decay threshold as opposed to Health on Kill. Grace of Water now adds 80 to 140 Ward Decay threshold. Grand Light of the Moon buff. Rhythm of the Tide also grants 6 to 10 flat health regen. Grand giving 12 to 20. Taste of Venom increasing the poison chance It's going up to 40 to 60 to match all the other ailment blessings. Buff, buff, buff. Patience of Herkier grants added armor. That's going up. That's going up. The Spell Leech and the Throwing Leech are getting nerfed, however. They're going to 1.2 to 2 from 1.5 to 3, and then the Grands are going 2.2 to 3.5 from 3.5 to 5% for both of them. Corruption scaling is changing. It is going to scale faster, and the corruption is going to buff the enemies more. The stability requirements for the second and third quest echoes of non-empowered timelines are going down so that we can get to empowered faster. We're getting more about 10% more corruption off of the Gaze of Oribus. Legendary potential in Weaver's Will is going to scale with corruption. Monsters are going to move faster and hit harder in corruption overall, and the scaling is going to be better for them. They are normalizing mob density across the monoliths, which kind of a bummer because Reign of Dragons was great to farm in because of the mob density. Monolith mod rewards. Increased item rarity and experience from modifiers have mostly retained their existing base values. The deadly is going, it's getting doubled in its increased item rarity and almost tripled in the experience it gives. Enrage at half health now grants 40% increased item rarity from 18% and 40% increased experience from 5. So that's like an 8x on the XP there, and then little more than a 2x on the item rarity. That's not bad. I mean, that's actually really nice because I tend to pick these up because, you know, you just kind of go in and you burst them down and they die before the affix is a problem. Mods values are now static and no longer scale up with corruption or distance from the center of the echo web. Their duration scales up to a max of 3 echoes, down from 6. So the amount of times you're going to have to deal with any specific affix is getting cut in half, which is nice. Disabled bonus XP from monoliths for characters below level 50. This is kind of a shame, but not really. It means that we can't use the monolith earlier on to pump out a few levels and then go back. So you're really going to want to be 50 before you go into monoliths to make the most out of your time if you are trying to get levels. If you're just trying to farm for some better gear, then sure, but we're getting 8 new monolith echoes, 2 ruined themed, 3 divine, 3 imperial. Monolith scenes have been tuned to look and perform better. That's nice to know. Completing a timeline that can unlock multiple other timelines now unlocks all of them regardless of dialogue choices and quest echoes. This is great because it means that I will no longer have to answer questions in global chat about how to unlock the other timeline because they don't understand when it says, you know, choose a different dialogue option for I forget Lagon's apprentice or like sidekick's name. I forget them. They're irrelevant. Or the other one that I always see is choosing a different clan in Blood, Frost, and Death, and people not knowing that there's a second way you can go. I assume generally people go to the right, didn't know you can go north, although, you know, vice versa. So it's just going to unlock all of them. Full controller support. Nice. Online. Implemented wide-ranging improvements across our matchmaking services, including improved matchmaking times. Parties always load into towns together. Smart. Matchmake into more popular towns. Reduced matchmaking failures and disconnects. That's really nice. Reduced occurrence of disconnects from portaling. So they didn't get rid of it, but it's going to happen less often. Matchmaking will now always use your preferred region setting after every server transition. Blows my mind that this was not like a top priority for multiplayer. Now you can have 25 characters up from 20 for online, and player queues are back. I mean, the player queues make sense if we're anticipating a large launch, which I know I am, especially with a lot of the larger content creators all going to be playing this game on release. I definitely foresee large queue times. I'm not an online player, so it doesn't really bother me at all. Character creation, solo character found has been added to online play. It's the same as solo. You can't use your stash. You have your own separate stash, and there's going to be no partying in online if you're doing the solo character found challenge. Temporarily disabled the option to abandon solo challenges. If you make your character solo, you're playing this character solo. There's no way to convert them to standard. Masochist has been removed and has been replaced with an item that replicates its functionality. The item can be found in the first area of the game. We are getting parry as a new defense type. It's going to negate all damage. However, unlike dodge, parrying does still count as being hit, so you can get ailments off of parrying, but you are not going to take the damage from the attack itself. Parry has no effect against damage over time. Makes sense, as we can't parry dots, and it's capped at 75%. So I believe that means 75% chance for you to parry, and it is currently not possible to reach this cap with available sources. Good to know. All right, so they've reworked stun avoid, how it works. 100 stun avoid gives us 1% to our stun threshold. By default, a hit must deal more than 5% of your health to stun you. If you have 100 stun avoid, that becomes 6%. 1,000 stun avoid, 15%. So stun avoid is... The number is going to be linear scaling, so it's 100 stun avoid for every 1% to your stun threshold. Your stun threshold is how much in percentage of your health has to be done in a single hit to stun. Stun avoidance related changes. Players' inherent stun avoidance has been changed from a static 25 to 250 plus 5 for character level. This results in the threshold of damage required to stun a player with no stun avoidance from items going from 5% of health plus ward to 20 or plus 25 to 7.5 to 12.5% of your health plus ward. Stun avoidance suffix has higher values, especially at lower tiers, and can now only roll on rings. So stun avoid can no longer get got on body armor and catalysts. It is now only on rings. Hybrid stun avoidance prefix has been replaced by a health and stun avoidance. This will roll on amulets and belts, up from only amulets, so we can get this split on belts as well as amulets if we want to stack it. Gives slightly more stun avoid than old hybrid stun avoidance affix did, and about 20% less health than a health suffix. Let's see here. Improved experience for skills with special requirements, such as channeled skills, skills with weapon requirements, or movement skills by adjusting elements like auto-targeting. Hopefully that actually works, because yeah, sometimes the targeting is a little jank. This right here is the most important thing in the goddamn patch notes. Bosses are no longer pushable. Anybody who has played a minions build completely understands why this is so massive. Especially the dragon zombie, though, always got pushed into a corner in like the north corner there if you were playing a minion build, and it just wasn't a good time. Bosses no longer being pushable is massive. When a player dies, their minions are now unsummoned. Honestly, I'm totally fine with this. Portals can now only be interacted with by their creators. Makes sense. Bees are getting buffed. Their speed is getting increased and their acceleration is getting increased. Super nice. And the Kickstarter Graveyard Zone. Assemble Abomination. Engorgement is getting a 1% nerf. It's going to 2% more damage from 3%. Bone Golem. Bone Hail nerf. Amalgam of Mages. nerf to the damage increased on the sun chance. And Cold Vengeance will now give cold resistance. Drain Life, let's see here. Improved the positioning of the start of the beam to better match the Acolyte's current size. Okay. Fixed Lay Waste, saying that it disabled all leech when it only disables base leech and leech from the Drain Life tree. If you take Lay Waste, you can still, if you have gear that gives just general Drain Life or the like leech life, spell leech life off of a blessing, that still applies, but not the stuff from within the tree. Necrotic Feast adds 15% base leech. This is getting changed, so it'll have leech as a base as opposed to increasing your leech. This is equal in power. Okay, I'll take you guys' word for it. Ravenous adds 2% health leech from increase base leech by 7%, equivalent to adding 2.1% health leech, so Ravenous buff. Insatiable, I'm unsure if that is a buff or a nerf. And Death's Barrier, the one that grants ward on kill, is getting buff. Overall, I don't know if this is going to be enough to make Drain Life good. I don't think the Drain Life is bad. I think it's just in the same boat as like Disintegrate, in the sense of like you have to remain stationary to channel it. I really like Drain Life. I think that it's definitely going to make you more, it's more tanky than playing Disintegrate, but I don't know. Dread Shade, 20% nerf to All for One. Infernal Shade Subjugation now scales up to a maximum damage bonus of 180%. Stated Subjugation's description to accurately state that it causes the skill to deal more damage. Okay, Subjugation now has a cap to it, which is kind of a bummer. It makes sense that they're capping it, but I don't know, that's kind of lame. Skeletal Mages will no longer cast Sacrifice. They'll now cast something similar called Profane Oblation. It deals 75% more damage and deals necrotic as opposed to physical. Summon Skeleton. Overall, the skeletons are getting buff. They're getting more resistance, more health. They are getting plus 1% added crit chance as opposed to 20% increase. Multi-shot now grants 8% more bow damage per point. Shift can be used from further away. The targeting is going to be better, so they won't have to shift and then walk over to the enemy before they can start hitting it. Acid Flask buff. Acid Flask time reduced. Rogues Shurikens buff. Yeah, overall, the skeletons, and really a lot of these are going for the rogue. The skeleton rogue is getting a lot of love, which is nice. Summon Volatile Zombie. Dread Horde and Giant Zombie now only have a 10% chance to trigger their effects on indirect cast from always triggering, such as via Awakening Presence. And Giant Zombie gives 120% increased mana cost, down from 300%. Overall, this is a nerf to Volatile Zombie, although your Giant Zombie is going to cost less. That is nice. Flame Wraith, the projectile they cast lasts 1.05 seconds, down from 1.25. Fine. They also get 20% less cast speed. I mean, this is a nerf to Flame Wraith. I don't think that it's a massive one. Curses have a new visual indicator on top of enemies to help improve movement, or improve moment-to-moment gameplay. Mage, Arcane Ascendance, Shocking Expanse buff, Slow Breathing buff, Cosmic Insight. This is a buff unless you had more than 50% increased cooldown recovery speed from other sources. It's a buff on the low end, a nerf on the high end. Mana Surge buff, Black Hole still needs love. Did they help it? Infusion grants 18 ward per second from 10. Massive, that's a 10% buff. Deep Space, increased freeze rate multiplier. I don't think that it's overall a buff. I'm not doing math. I woke up an hour ago. Gravity's Guile buff, 7x on Gravity's Guile. Scorching got a point removed. Flaming got a point removed. Supermassive got more points. Heat Wave got less points. Drifting Singularity requires 1 point in absolute 0, down from 2. Okay. Disintegrate, its beam is slightly longer. Elemental Nova, they changed the hitbox, so it is a buff because the old hitboxes were a little janky. This has made it so that they're going to hit more reliably, adjusted the VFX of the default and lightning novas to more closely match their hitboxes. Cool. Fireball is going to go the same distance but faster. Fireball, increased ignite chance. Frost Claw, got a bunch of nerfs here. Makes sense. I mean, Frost Claw was kind of the best of the three in a vacuum. Obviously, Lightning Blast, incredibly strong. I think everybody's in agreement. Fireball is the weakest of the three. Frost Claw eating some much-deserved nerfs. We're losing 2 from Shiver Shell. Fen of the Frozen got a buff to Slow and Chill. Gift of Winter, 12% chance. Up from 4. Okay, maybe didn't really get a buff or get a nerf here. Rayowen's Veil grants 1% ward on cast and doubled the freeze rate multiplier. On Through the Snow now adds less mana, so from 8 down to 6. Ever Onward, also less on the mana cost. Frostwall, please don't nerf what I think you guys nerfed. Oh, I haven't looked at this yet. I'm nervous. I am nervous because I play a lot of builds that don't require, but really revolve around the Frostwall Flame Ward looping. Crystals of Protection, nerf 10 less ward on pass through. Okay. Protection of the Apostate, nerf. They cut in half the amount of ward you get for monsters walking through it. Chilled Touch now has up to 2 points and grants 7% more damage to chilled enemies while you have a frost wall per point from 5. So 14 versus 5%. Obviously buff. The Prepared Wards node on the Frostwall tree no longer causes 250% of Flame Ward's mana to be consumed. Okay, but now gives Frostwall a 12-second cooldown shared with Flame. Oh, no. Oh, I understand why they did this, but why did you do this? Rip several Rune Master builds I play that were abusing the hell out of it. Frostwall now gets a cooldown if you take Prepared Wards. Glyph of Dominion, Charged Reflection, grants 1 ward per 5 total uncapped res, from 4, so a nerf. And Arcane Mirror that grants plus 15%, or now grants plus 15% to all res, down from 25. Sure, they're nerfing the resistance aspect. I assume that's fine. Meteor, Cycle of Fire, you are getting 10 ward from 8. Infernal Column, the increased mana cost, nerfed. Aftermath, increased mana recovered by not that much, but a decent amount. Force of Impact, 50% stun chance from 40%. Shattering Star, buff. Rapid Breakup, buff. Well, no, not buff. This is a break even, but each individual point is a buff. So if you're not going for all 3 points in the node, it's going to be better. Rune Bolt, Pyromantic, Fulminating, and Cryomantic are all getting damage buffs. They're each getting 4% more damage to the corresponding element. Rune Bolt's Efficient Experiment node now correctly states that it requires Glyph of Chaos and not Rune of Chaos. Increased responsiveness and more cast speed, sure. Runic Invocations. Okay, so this is really the make or break for Rune Master. Plasma Orb. Now the orb is going to deal more damage. Okay. Igneous Rain now has 50% ignite chance, and it inflicts 20% increased duration. That's nice. It's a buff to Igneous Rain, a buff to Plasma Orb, a buff to Realms of Mayhem. Rune Gale deals 20% more damage for both parts of the ability. Okay, so Rune Gale buff. I don't even remember which one Rune Gale is, if I'm being honest. Big Fireball, 40% more damage, and the Spreading Flames it inflicts deals 100% more damage. That's really nice if you're playing Big Fireball. Mirror Bolt caught a nerf. Ball Lightning caught a buff. Okay, like this is good. Mirror Bolt I don't think was the top priority. I see Hydrahedron down there, and we'll see what they did to that. I think that Hydrahedron was kind of the big one. I'm kind of bummed that I'm not seeing Blizzard in here. I think Blizzard and Grand Prism Nova both buffs, especially for buffing Ball Lightning's damage. Blizzard should have gotten the buff, and Fireball's damage. Where's Blizzard? Frostguard Invocation now grants 14 ward plus 1 ward per 2 intelligence every 0.4 seconds. Okay. Hydrahedron. Less damage, increased mana cost, max targeting range, all nerfed. I don't think it's significant enough. I know I was expecting a lot heavier of a nerf. Snap Freeze, its cooldown is now 18 seconds. I don't even remember what the original cooldown it was, but 20% of its remaining cooldown is recovered whenever you freeze an enemy, including with Snap Freeze itself, up to a max of 2 times a second. Honestly, that's not bad if you're using Snap Freeze, but not enough to make me want to take Snap Freeze. Primalist skill changes. Earthquake. Fury of the Elements no longer creates a lightning storm. Now it expends 5 storm stacks per point over half a second and deals more damage. I talked about this yesterday in the video I released about Earthquake and Storm Totem not casting lightning, but instead casting lightning storm. So it does look like they are actually changing at least Earthquake. We will see if they are changing Storm Totem to kind of do the same thing, or to at least use the Gathering Storm tree. This is a nice buff to the lightning Earthquake builds. Fury Leap, Summon Vines from Rise now show info such as duration and base health. Violent Upheaval now properly shows ability tooltip for upheaval when holding Alt. The lightning nodes now mention and use Stormbolt instead of a lightning subscale exclusive to Fury Leap. Honestly, when I made the video yesterday, I just assumed that it was casting lightning, not its own special thing, but Stormbringer has been clarified to state it modifies the frequency of Stormbolt, not the projectile speed. Okay. Rejuvenating Storms no longer gives Lightning Pen, instead gives added spell damage per 2 attunement while leaping. Interesting. I'm kind of bummed we're losing the lightning penetration, because that was massive for Stormbolt if you were going to be playing Lightning Stormbolt. Just getting free penetration is always really, really nice. Although the increased flat damage, that's also not bad, and it's scaling flat damage, so okay. Fury Leap has a slightly lower delay before jumping. It's going from 0.2 seconds to 0.1 seconds. Maelstrom. Grip of Chaos now correctly says that Twisters deal physical damage and not cold damage. Okay. Grip of Chaos now shows the Twister ability tooltip. Twisters now deal more damage. Tsunami now shows the Tsunami ability tooltip when holding Alt. The Lightning nodes are now using Stormbolt as opposed to Lightning. Yep. Summon Bear. Retaliatory Thorns now has a 1 second cooldown. Tearing Thorns now also gives Thorn Burst more damage. Thick Hide gets a 10% buff to its health. Raptor's getting a buff. You know, I'll take that. I will take a Raptor buff. Raptor is really cool, but if you're trying to play solo pet, honestly, Scorpion has just kind of been the better build. So this will give Scorpion hopefully a run for its money. Summon Wolf. Howl grants more damage, 25% more damage as opposed to 50% increased damage. Okay. Legendary Bite now has 1 point from 5. Grants 40% more damage, more stun chance, and 5% added crit chance, but also 10% less attack speed, which has been changed from 15, 15, 15. Okay, so the attack speed node got nerfed, but the movement speed got buffed. Wolf and Recovery now grants health regen percentage and flat. Stormcaller's Reprisal and Stormborn now are using Stormbolt as opposed to Lightning. Stormborn also has a chance to trigger when the wolf hits an enemy. This is massive. Gathering Storm Wolf is going to be like actually good, because now we don't just have to rely on our wolves getting hit. Wolves and squirrels deal 10% more damage. Removed an unintentional 15% more melee damage modifier on squirrels. Squirrels from Herald now have a 35% less damage dealt modifier from 45%. It was 0 in reality. Yeah. As a result of these changes, wolves now deal 10% more melee damage, and squirrels are dealing 38% less melee damage. I still think I'm going to run like squirrels with Stormborn and just get a ton of Stormbolt triggers off of both the squirrels dealing damage and the Gathering Storm as the melee to build that up, and then popping it companion ability to get a bunch of bolts all at once. I think that's going to be a really fun way to build squirrels. I will probably toy around with that once I'm done with Falconer. Summon Scorpion. The tail attack got buffed. Thorn Totem, we are getting nodes that are also going to be granting physical resistance, cold resistance. The increased cast speed got nerfed by a third. Nightshade Briar got a 40% nerf. Tornado, like I said, the lightning is now being changed to use Stormbolt. Upheaval animation time has been changed. The duration has been increased. This corresponds to around 6% less attack speed. Increased damage effectiveness. This will amount to about 12% more hit damage. Change is expected to be a slight buff to most upheaval builds. Does not change or does not affect the totems. So the totems are going to get buff. Shockwaves from Sundering Strike node on the upheaval tree are also affected by damage effectiveness change in order to maintain damage parity. Rogue. Hit portion of the skill now deals more damage, 40% more damage. Poison pools, you can have a max of 4 poison pools at a time. Caustic Concoction buff, we're going to be able to get 100% poison chance. Acid Flask now has a new node called Alchemist's Gift that turns it into a trap. Interesting. So more traps, more trap synergy for Falconer to play with. Ballista, whole bunch of ballista buffs, which it definitely needed right off the rip. 50% more damage and 20% increased attack speed. Two big things that the ballista needed was more damage and more attack speed. Its health is not important. The fact that it shot Nerf darts at a rate of a Nerf gun from the 90s was a problem. Shared enhancement buffed damage sharing to 25% from 15%. Same thing for contaminating shots, buffed to 25% ailment sharing. Its turn speed now scales with increased to minion attack speed, making it feel better in combat. Added a new node, Agile Engineering, which grants 1% increased placement speed per dexterity and 1% increased attack speed per 5 dexterity. It is attached to the root node, and the efficient construction and rapid fire nodes now require 1 point in it, instead of being attached to the root node themselves, okay? Cinder Strike. The first bow attack is 20% slower, and overall the first attack got a buff. This is great for those Falcon Punch gloves. Super looking forward to that. Dancing Strikes. Windmill Ballet now has 2 points and grants 50% chance to use shurikens up from 30. Shadow Daggers. Nerf, 68% base down from 90, 340 added down from 450. Legitimately, I think that this added damage effectiveness could be like 150% and Shadow Daggers would still be good. This is a somewhat significant Shadow Dagger nerf. I don't think it's enough to where Shadow Daggers is just, unplayable now. But it clearly is not going to be as strong as it was. Smoke Bomb. Smoke Blades is now giving flat throwing damage and melee damage as opposed to percentage increased. Sentinel. Void Knight. Erasing Strike. Its added damage effectiveness has been bumped. Mark of the End now gives 100% chance to shred enemy void resistance, up from 25%. That is massive. The Void Beams are doing more damage. Let's see, what else did they get? Erasing Strike got a bunch of buffs, which I think was kind of necessary. Erasing Strike definitely needed the love. It is our, as my dad puts it, like Hulk smash class of the game. It's also a class that is very popular with newer players to the game. It's the coolest of the Sentinels, like visually and flavor wise, it is like the coolest one. So a lot of players gravitate to it over something like Paladin or Forge Guard. So that's good. We'll see what else they got and see if it's enough to put them into A tier. I'm kind of leaning towards it because, I mean, I like Erasing Strike, man. Forge Strike also got 100% added damage effectiveness. Judgment, Pious Offering got a nerf. 3% more damage per 2. Sacred Sword buff, 50% ignite chance on hit up from 25. Lunge, fixed spelling mistake in Ambuscate. I love that is on the patch notes, that they fixed a spelling mistake. Rebuke now has an 8-second cooldown from 5. Okay, so its cooldown got increased. Protective Legacy, buffs persist after channeling, is changed to be half the channel duration. Burst of Speed grants haste for half the channel duration from increased movement speed for the full channel duration. Okay, so another nerf. Solemn Vow grants 15% increased duration, down from 20%, and has a max of 2. Why is Rebuke eating so many nerfs? I don't think Rebuke was like, not that it wasn't good, but I don't think it was good to warrant. This is more nerfs than I think anything else. Like Rune Master caught less nerfs than Rebuke has. Added a new node behind Retaliation called Reclaimed Refuge that recovers some of its cooldown on melee hits. Okay, so Battle Meditation got buffed. Augmented Plating gives 15% more as opposed to 25% increased. Increased healing per second. 10 more healing per second from Redemption. Increased. So they want this to be they're nerfing the offensive aspect of Rebuke and changing it to be, they want it to be more of a defensive skill is really what they're doing. Rive removed the Opportunist node, which was the more crit chance against ignited enemies. Added a new node, Scrap Metal. Whenever you would summon a forged weapon, you instead gain a stack of scrap metal instead. Each stack grants 3% more armor, 3% more Rive damage, last 10 seconds. The duration can be modified by modifiers to forged weapon duration. That's nice. I mean, the forged weapons are a nice pickup on Rive, but nothing where like it's massive. Scrap metal is that's actually kind of nice. I would honestly rather have this buff, especially when I'm bossing, than the Forged Swords. Shield Rush, Void Beams on Shield Rush deal more damage. Shield Throw, Forgeborn got a buff. Heavy Shield now got a buff. Armoring Aegis got a nerf, so we're getting 20 armor on Ricochet down from 25. Your armor is doubled while you're channeling Smelter's Wrath. Vengeance, Iron Blades are now affected by nodes on the tree. That took long enough. Double Riposte mitigates 2% more damage. Dark Duelist is now 4% more global damage. Passive changes. Berserker, nerf, 15% more melee damage and 4% less damage taken while at low health. That's down from 20% and 5%. Ligonian Wrath now grants +1 melee and spell damage per point, and then with 4 points, you get a 25% chance to cast Stormbolt when hit. Lagon's Answer grants an 8% chance to cast Stormbolt on spellcast, 20% chance to cast Stormbolt while channeling per point with a max of 5, so that's 40% chance on spellcast and 100% chance while channeling. Thunderstrike now grants 10% chance to cast Stormbolts on hit. With 4 points allocated, you get 10% additional attack speed. Conflux now grants 3% increased area for skills, 1% less damage taken from shocked enemies per point. And with 5 points allocated, your indirect Stormbolt casts have a 20% cast again chance after a quarter of a second. That's actually really cool. Mage, no changes to Spellblade is what I'm seeing, guys. All right, no buffs or nerfs to any of their skills. No buffs or nerfs, unfortunately, to their passive tree. Unfortunate. Unless it's somewhere else in here, we see nothing about Fire Aura. It feels like they have forgotten that Fire Aura exists and that it's terrible. Rune Master, Arcane Focus. We're getting less ward on cast. Edict of the Scion, reduced ward gain on area skill use. Jagged Veil, reduced ward gain on crit. Buffed the 3 rune word buffs, Avalanche, Hurricane, and Inferno to grant plus 10 spell damage of their respective element, up from 6. Runic Fortress got a 5% nerf to the Ward Burst. Chronomancy in Sorcerer, 1% buff. Distant Spark, buff for Spark Nova. Warder grants 15 ward on fire, cold, and lightning damage hits from 10. Rogue, evasion grants 4% less damage while moving, down from 5. Juggernaut on Sentinel got the resistances you gain increased. Unique and set item changes. So they changed the bases for a lot from what I can imagine. Aaron's Will, base type remains Revenant Plate, so causing it to gain 100 armor, 3 to 6% of max health, gain his endurance threshold, but lose 11-15% endurance. Aberrant Call. They changed also the effective level for legendary potential. Aberrant Call is now also granting minion movement speed. The minion damage mod is now just minion melee damage. Arrow Guard got the glancing blow portion of it nerfed. It now gives us health when we receive a glancing blow. It now grants over double, well, little less than double on the low end and double at the high end armor. Ardor's Legacy got its base changed, so now its implicits are going to give you cold res and freeze rate multiplier, and it will now grant +1 or +2 to all minion skills. Box of Hydra got nerfed. The increased area got almost a 20% nerf, 63 down from 81. Max cast rate down to 36 from 54, and the ward decay threshold that it gives you got increased. Death Rattle now gives anywhere from +1 to +3 levels of sacrifice, up from only +1, and the minion crit multiplier aspect got nerfed. Elko's Abandon, this is the acid flask coat, got its base changed. It's now going to give dodge rating and increased damage over time. Hive Mind lost 7 armor and 1 to 6% poison res due to reduction of stats on its base type. And the extra health got a little buff at the high end. Kermode's Cage got a massive buff here. It is now Beast Mail, so we're getting more armor. We are getting increased movement speed and flat health. This is actually really, really nice. The movement speed, I will take the movement speed buff and the health regen nerf. I will take that for Cold Werebear, 100%. The extra movement speed I will take over losing a little bit of health regen and a little bit of our damage because of the health regen. Legacy of the Quiet Forest is now a Nomad belt from Bronze Belt. It grants us way more armor. The net result is that it gains 1 more potion slot and 10 minimum armor. Its max armor has not changed due to the loss of implicit armor. Mad Alchemist Ladle, eating a big nerf. 2% on the more spell damage per negative ailment was already bad enough, but it only counts up to 8. Anything over 8 is just extra. Massive bummer. Nightbringer got a buff on the high end for the void damage at low health. Omen of Thunder has gained 1 potion and lost 50 to 100 armor. Its effect now grants 24 to 34 spell damage to existing totems, up from 17 to 24. So now its floor is its previous ceiling. Paranoia lost a lot of armor, but now also grants less damage taken while moving. Renegade's Will, which is the Vengeance one-hander, now grants +3 to 5 ranks to Vengeance from 3. Sacrificial Embrace now grants 28 to 58% chance to gain a stack of Abyssal Rite on crit, up from 20 to 28%, and now has +14 void spell damage and +14% void penetration per stack, up from 10. Sanguine Horde got a buff. Shadow Beacon now grants +1 to +2 to void skills, up from +1. Now also grants -10 to -5 erasing strike mana cost. Shroud of Obscurity, base type change from Heretics Robes to Witches Robes, so we're losing mana regen and instead getting cast speed. The ward on dodge got increased. Sunforged, Great Helm, and Cuirass are both set items. Bases got changed, so we're instead of 400 armor, we're now 365 armor, endurance threshold, and increased fire damage. Same thing with the Cuirass is now giving us endurance, increased fire damage, and the increased fire damage per forged weapon is getting buffed on that as well. The Falcon is getting renamed to the Kestrel. No longer grants 15% increased movement speed if you've hit an enemy in the last 5 seconds. That is kind of a bummer. However, what they changed it with is honestly kind of massive. Now grants 5 to 7% increased movement speed. So we're getting flat movement speed on it. We are getting 30 to 45% chance to gain haste on hit, increase the effects of haste, and +1 rank to all dexterity skills. The Falcon just got like a really nice buff. That is really nice. It's going to make you feel less bad about getting like 30 of these things before you leave the first chapter of the game. Troka's Teeth, this is another quiver. The frostbite chance on bow hit is getting a nice large buff. Freeze rate with puncture is going up to 90 from 60. That is a massive buff to that quiver. Twisted Heart getting nerfed, going down to 5 to 8% from 10 to 13% on the health to ward conversion. Storm Crown getting its base changed. We're losing increased elemental damage and instead getting increased spell damage. We're also getting less. More intelligence and more lightning penetration on it though. Nice pickups, nice buffs to Storm Crown. Zuriel's Hunt, I don't even remember. I think this is this a bow? I think this is this one of the lightning bows? Triggered effects grant 62 to 92% lightning penetration, up from 42 to 62%. Nice buff to that. Base items. Faction Gamba added 4 new endgame caches containing rare and exalted versions of all the base item types for each faction. Rename non-class specific Forest Garb base type to Forest Cuirass to avoid confusion with the Primalist specific Forest Garb base type. Item level requirements from affixes is now capped at 90. Uniques and base item types can still have a level requirement above 90. Here's buffs and nerfs to all of the bases. I am not going to read all of these because God, there's a lot of them. Affixes. New affixes. Obviously, plus rank to all the new skills. Chance for 3 additional projectiles when you directly cast Chaos Bolts. Added spell damage for curses. That's really nice. Spirit frequency, massive. Spell damage for curses. That's the same. So they put that in there twice. Ward per second while channeling Ghost Flame. Mana efficiency with Ghost Flame. Duration for Profane Veil. Okay, increased cast speed while cursed is interesting. And increased damage over time while you have Ailment Overload, mana efficiency with Soul Feast, and chance to wither on hit with Soul Feast. Primalist affixes, plus rank, chance to gain a storm stack when you use Gathering Storm and hit an enemy, less frequency of expending storm stacks and added spell damage for Stormbolt, and increased frequency of expending. This one right here, the lower the frequency, increase the damage, I actually really like. I'm not sure what the percentage here is going to be, but that is actually really nice because it won't overwrite the time delay reduction that you get for each stack. So if you can build enough stacks, you can still keep them coming out really quickly, and it's just going to be added spell damage, really. Obviously, plus ranks for Rogue, increased damage in area with Dive Bomb, added throwing damage with Caltrops, critical vulnerability on hit with Caltrops, max traps with Explosive Trap, and increased throwing attack speed. That's really nice. Double damage with Falcon Strikes. Bleed chance and poison chance granted by your Falcon. Critical strike multiplier. Area for throwing skills. Area with Caltrops. And shred armor on hit with Caltrops. And then obviously plus ranks to healing hands. Ranged enemy behavior changes. Several ranged enemies now move more between attacking to make combat feel more dynamic. I hate this. I hate running into melee and then the enemy running away from me. The damn like mermaids who fire out the tsunamis are a massive pain in the ass for that one. This also makes these enemies less oppressive and robotic when fighting them. Everybody who it's going to affect. All enemies are getting just 2% more health, 1% more damage, and health and damage is going to increase globally above level 60 by 5% at level 80 and 25% at level 100. Enemies are going to have more health, deal more damage, and that's going to scale up until we hit level 100. Updated enemy visuals, all the new models and stuff. This is actually like interesting for me. Stash visual update. I don't know what needed to be updated with that. I thought it was just fine. The Stormcrow, Scorpion, Sabertooth, and Raptor are all getting new models. Fire Explosion VFX is getting updated. A lot of these VFX are getting changed. So Hail of Arrows, Dark Quiver, Dive Bomb, Summon Skeleton, Disintegrate, Fireball, Rive, Erasing Strike, Tempest Strike, Detonating Arrow, Acid Flask, Hungering Souls, Profane Veil, Bone Prison, Summoned Revenant, Caltrops, Hammer Throw, Javelin, Lethal Mirage, Smoke Bomb as Aerial Assault, Avalanche, Summon Skeleton, Archer, Runic Invocation, Lightning Blast, Spriggan Form, Forge Strike, Healing Hands, Marrow Shards, Wandering Spirits, Anomaly, Wolf Howls, Size, and Bone Curse. Also, the Fire Explosion and the Infernal Shades Explosion. Some UI updates, localization, menu changes, map and quest log, sound changes, music changes, new sound effects. Acolyte has a new voice. Admiral Harton has a new voice. Large number of Imperial enemies now have spoken voice lines. Wengari enemies now have new voices. I wish they'd have more voice lines, because if I have to hear die humans one more goddamn time, I'm gonna lose my mind. Void cultists all now have new voices. Drowned husks have new sound effects. Bug fixes. Jesus, we are an hour and a half into recording, and I don't know how much more we have left. So I'm going to try and speed this up. Skill bug fixes. Marked for Death is getting a nerf to make it actually work the way it's supposed to. Acolyte skill bug fixes. Sigil of Mortality now clarifies it overwrites Marked for Death's normal duration. You're probably going to see a massive cut here. I am going to just read ahead and see if any of the bug fixes are actual buffs or nerfs, and I'll just cut to those. Summon Volatile Zombie is getting a bug fix that is a nerf. Fixed a bug where Volatile Zombie's Grand Sacrifice and Effigy of Combustion could trigger while on negative mana. So this is effectively a nerf to some Volatile Zombies builds out there who were abusing this bug. Frost Claw for Mage fixed it so that Age of Vengeance node in the Frost Claw tree actually works. For Runic Invocation, Blizzard is going to be freezing more often, as there was a bug that caused its freeze rate to be less than it was supposed to be. Okay, Avalanche for Primalist. Avalanche got a buff. The Coldstone Elementals were not receiving the attribute scaling that was listed. Now they will. So the Elementals are going to be stronger. That is really, really nice. Rogue, massive here. Massive. Flurry and Detonating Arrows fixed a bug where multiple skills such as Flurry or Detonating Arrow would miss a target that it shouldn't. Thank God. So that's about it for the class bug fixes. There is nothing in there really other than what I have just cut to that were buffs or nerfs to skills because of bug fixes. Going into system bug fixes, minions will now travel with you into arenas correctly. Fix the bug where dummies break in arena after transitioning scenes. I personally have never seen this on my game, but I have seen other people dealing with this bug where the dummies just bug out. Fix the bug to synchronize necrotic traps in Rustlin's arena. Controller bug fixes, dungeon bug fixes, monolith bug fixes, a lot of online bug fixes, a lot of quest bug fixes, visuals, sound, and UI. I'm actually curious in here in the quests. I've been having an issue with the quest that ends the first chapter where you get sent to the Ruined Era, where I have to click through the Elder's Dialogue twice for it to trigger the end of the quest, and it doesn't look like that is showing here. Sound bug fixes, UI fixes, visual bug fixes. Yeah, fixed a bug where players and minions can push larger enemies / bosses. This is massive. Fixed issues with many enemy and boss skills, attacks, or indicators being invisible. I never really noticed that. I've never really had an issue with that, but it is, if they are meant to be there and they were invisible because of a bug, then obviously this is a good fix. Fixed a bug that caused Bell Brother Bartholomew's belt swing attack to do no damage. Fixed a bug where the self-inflicted bleeds from Bleeding Heart received penetration from zone level similar to enemy attacks. I did not know that was a thing, and that's honestly kind of hilarious. Death Rattle won't stack anymore. Bug that would cause bosses who are teleporting to drop double the loot. That's a bummer. Fix the death screen always saying that Calamity killed you if you had it equipped. That has been in the game forever. I'm surprised that that is getting fixed, but I will take it. And we are at the end, and then some zone bug fixes, just mini-map changes, waypoint stuff, some texture stuff. That's it for the patch notes. That, though, is going to be it from me. The usual stuff that you gotta say at the end of a YouTube video, you know, like, comment, subscribe. What are your thoughts on the patch notes? With the patch notes now in hand, what are you planning on playing? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you to all the new subscribers. We are not going to be doing anything on Tuesday, but Wednesday all day we will be playing Falconer. I look forward to seeing maybe some of you guys there, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.